"Can I sit next to you?" the one-legged girl asked the prince. Then he looked at her and said, "Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from." The bell above the cafe door jingled when Hannah pushed it open with her shoulder. Warm air rushed toward her, carrying the smell of coffee and pastry and wet wool. The noise hit her next. Spoons against porcelain, boots against floorboards, voices in overlapping currents. For a moment she just stood there, weight balanced on her good leg, hands tight around the tops of her crutches. It was completely full. Of course it is, she thought. It is Vienna. It is winter. Where else would they all go? She shifted one crutch forward, then the other, and stepped inside. The movement was practiced, but today even practiced movements hurt. The stump of her missing leg throbbed inside the wooden socket of her prosthesis with every jolt. She tried not to limp more than usual. She tried not to look as if each step was a bargain struck with pain. No one moved to make space. Men in uniform leaned over newspapers, boots stretched out. Ladies in fur-trimmed cloaks huddled together, gloves tugged off finger by finger. A cluster of students laughed too loudly near the counter. Every table was full. Every chair was claimed. Almost. Near the window, where frost traced ferns along the glass, a small round table stood with only one man. A folded overcoat hung on the back of the empty chair beside him, as if to ward off intruders. He wore a dark suit that fit too well to be cheap, but too simply to be flashy. His hair was neatly combed, his posture relaxed, his eyes lowered to the newspaper in his hands. He looked like a man who expected to be left alone. Hannah's heart began to pound anyway. Her leg begged to sit. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Stand straight, Hannah. Your body bows enough, do not let your spirit bow with it." She swallowed and made her way toward the empty chair. The floor seemed longer than it was. Snatches of conversation faded when she passed. A man at a nearby table glanced down, then up, then away, as if ashamed of having looked at her crutches at all. A woman followed the movement of the wooden tip, her lips tightening with something that was not quite pity, not quite curiosity. Hannah kept her chin level. One step, another. The familiar rhythm. Wood, shoe, wood, shoe. When she reached the table, the man still had not looked up. Up close he seemed a little younger than she had thought, perhaps late 20s. His jaw was clean-shaven, his mouth set in a neutral line that looked as if it could turn stern or warm with very little prompting. She cleared her throat softly. "Excuse me," she said. "May I sit next to you?" He lifted his head, and for the first time Hannah saw his eyes. They were not cold, as she had expected from a man dressed so finely. They were watchful, grey, or perhaps blue, she could not tell in the cafe's dim light, but touched with something like surprise, as if he had not anticipated being addressed at all. His gaze dropped, unavoidably, to her crutches. He did not jerk it away. He did not stare. He simply took in the fact of them, then met her eyes again. "Of course," he said, and his voice was low and clear. "The chair is yours." He rose as much as the cramped space allowed and moved his folded overcoat off the empty chair. It was a small gesture, but he did it with the precise courtesy of someone who had been trained not to forget such things. "Thank you," Hannah murmured. She eased herself into the chair carefully, one hand gripping the edge of the table for balance. She hated the moment of awkwardness when she had to lift the heavy wooden leg forward, hated the way her body tilted. Her crutches tapped against the table leg and rattled the cups. "I am sorry," she whispered, cheeks heating. "I am clumsy today." "You walked across this room in winter on those," the man said calmly. "That is not clumsy." Her eyes darted up, surprised by the simple, matter-of-fact tone. He said it as if he had remarked on the strength of a horse or the reliability of a clock. "It is only walking," she said. "Most men here complained about the snow after 3 steps," he replied. "I watch them." His mouth tipped up slightly. "I know what I am saying." A reluctant smile tugged at her lips. "Then perhaps the snow is very proud today." He folded his newspaper and set it aside. "Then we are all justified in being late to our business." A waiter appeared at Hannah's elbow, drawn more by the money he might collect than by any concern for her comfort. "Fräulein?" he asked briskly. "A small coffee, please," she said. "Very small. And if there is a roll that is not too dry—" "I will see," the waiter muttered, eyeing her plain cloak and worn gloves, clearly assessing how much she might spend. The man beside her reached into his pocket with a smooth motion. "Bring the lady whatever she wishes," he said. "And something hot besides. The morning is cruel." The waiter's manner changed in an instant. "At once, sir." Hannah stiffened. "There is no need," she said quickly. "I can pay for my own coffee." "I do not doubt it," the man answered. "But I grew cold merely watching you cross the street. I would feel guilty if I did not contribute to the repair of my imagination." She blinked, then let out a little laugh. "You speak very strangely for a man with such proper gloves." He glanced down at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "Do I?" "I had not noticed." He hesitated, then added, "If my offer offends you, I withdraw it. Only say so." The fact that he asked instead of assuming softened something tight in her chest. "It does not offend me," she said quietly. "It only surprises me." "Then we are both surprised," he replied. "I am not often allowed to buy coffee for anyone." "Not allowed," she repeated, puzzled. He seemed to reconsider and shrugged lightly. "Not inclined, then. I travel often. One loses the habit of sharing a table." "Ah," she said, "a traveller." "That will do," he said. "And you, Fräulein—" "Weiss," she supplied. "Hannah Weiss." "Fräulein Weiss," he repeated, as if tasting the sound. "I am Leonhardt." She waited for something more. Leonhardt what? Of where? A clerk? A merchant? A lawyer? But he offered nothing. "Just Leonhardt?" she asked. "For this morning," he said, and there was a glint in his eyes that she could not quite read. "If you do not mind the informality." "I'm a copyist of music," she replied. "My world is full of names with 17 syllables. A simple one is a rest for the hand." "A copyist?" His interest sharpened. "Then you are responsible for the notes that torture our pianists." "Not the notes," she said, smiling. "Only the ink." The waiter returned with a small cup of coffee, a roll, and a steaming bowl of something that smelled like broth. He set them down with unexpected care. "Thank you," Hannah said. "Thank your companion," the waiter replied, nodding toward Leonhardt with the sudden deference of a man who had recognized the cut of his coat. Hannah glanced at the man beside her. "You did not have to. Drink it while it is hot," Leonhardt said. "You can argue with me when your fingers are no longer numb." Her fingers were numb, she realized. She wrapped them around the bowl for a moment, feeling them sting as warmth returned. "You are very insistent," she said. "So I have been told," he answered. She took a careful sip of the broth. It was salty and simple and felt like life itself spreading through her chest. Leonhardt watched her, as if it were of interest to him whether she enjoyed it. No one watched her like that outside her father. People watched her walk. People watched her limp. They did not watch her eat soup. She lowered the bowl and said, "You are not Viennese." "No?" He tilted his head. "What betrays me?" "Your vowels," she said, "and the way you hold your shoulders, as if your coat has invisible embroidery that we must all admire." His shoulders relaxed into a real smile now. "You are merciless, Fräulein Weiss." "Only a little," she said. "Where are you from?" "From farther than I look," he answered. "Tell me instead about the music you copy. That is a safer geography." She could have pressed. She did not. Curiosity stirred, but it felt impolite to pry when he had just paid for her broth. "I copy whatever they bring me," she said. "Waltzes, mostly marches. Songs that young ladies sigh over and forget in a month." "You do not like waltzes?" he asked. "I like them when they are played well," she said. "I did not like them when I was 12, and the doctor told my father I would never dance one." He went very still. She regretted the words the instant they came out. Too much. Too honest. She reached for her roll to cover the moment, tearing off a piece with her fingers. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "That is not proper talk for a cafe." "Who declared it improper?" he asked. "Everyone," she said with a little shrug. He leaned slightly closer, his voice lower. "Then everyone has less courage than you, Fräulein Weiss," he said. "And I am pleased you do not speak like everyone." Heat rose in her cheeks again, but this time it was not the sting of shame. "You do not have to flatter me because my leg is gone," she said, not quite trusting him. "If your leg was still there, I would say the same thing," he replied simply. She searched his face for mockery and found none. He looked back at her with a frankness that unsettled her. Men either looked away from her or at her too long for the wrong reasons. He did neither. "You are very strange, Leonhardt," she said softly. "So I have been told," he replied. He took a sip of his coffee and added, "Did you lose it in an accident?" "In a fever," she answered. "I was 9. First came the pain, then came the quiet. When I woke, it was gone." He did not look at her leg. He looked at her eyes. "And you learned to walk again," he said. "My father insisted," she said. "He told me that if the world wanted me to crawl, it would have to catch me first." "A wise man," Leonhardt said. "He sells music scores," she explained. "Not the expensive ones, the used ones that smell like our old curtains. I help him when I can." "By copying," he said. "And by counting coins," she added. "And by pretending not to notice when he squints at the small print." Leonhardt's gaze softened. "And today you came all the way into the city to deliver work." She nodded. "The printer near the cathedral asked for 10 copies of a new piece. It was not very good music," she admitted, "but his coins are as round as anyone's." "How far did you walk?" he asked. "From the Freihausviertel," she said. "In this cold?" His brow furrowed. "And then back," she said, "once I leave here. My father will be waiting." "You should have taken a carriage," he said. She laughed. "On my wages, no thank you. I prefer to arrive with cold toes and an easy conscience." "You may have a cold conscience and warm feet at least once a year," he said dryly. "I will plan it for Easter," she replied. He laughed, then really laughed, and the sound startled her. It was a rich, unguarded sound that did not match the careful lines of his posture. A man at the next table glanced over, frowning, as if laughter from a lame girl and a stranger offended his sense of order. Hannah felt the familiar brush of eyes against her back and shoulders. She straightened in her chair. "People are looking," she murmured. "Let them," Leonhardt said. "They do not like when people like me forget to be invisible," she said, keeping her tone light. "Then it is good they are reminded," he replied. "Not everyone can afford to remind them," she said. He studied her. "You walk through the city on crutches in the snow, you bring music to life with your hands, and you cross crowded rooms to ask for a chair. You already cannot afford not to." She bit her lip, not sure whether to be annoyed or moved. She settled on both. "You talk as if you are very used to telling other people what they can afford," she said. He smiled faintly. "Perhaps I am." "Are you a banker?" she asked. "Or a lawyer?" He hesitated the slightest fraction of a second. "Neither." "Then what do you do?" she pressed, half teasing, half genuinely curious. "I attend to matters of household," he said vaguely. "Too many ledgers, too many signatures. You would scold my handwriting." "I would probably improve it," she said. "I do not doubt it," he answered. They fell into a companionable silence for a few moments. Outside, a carriage rattled past, wheels crunching over packed snow. Condensation ran down the window in slow trails. "Do you travel often?" Hannah asked. "Often enough," he said. "Sometimes by choice, sometimes not." "How can one be forced to travel?" she asked. "When those who command you decide that your presence is needed elsewhere," he said. "So you are a servant," she said, half jesting. "Of a sort," he replied, and there was something in his voice that made her wonder who he obeyed. "And you?" he asked. "Have you ever wanted to leave Vienna?" She thought about it. "When I was 12, I dreamed of going to Paris and proving to the French that Viennese cakes are better." "And now?" he asked. "Now I am content to reach the next street without slipping," she said. "Dreams become smaller when stairs are not your friends." He lowered his gaze for a moment. "That is a loss," he said quietly. She shrugged. "Small dreams are easier to carry, but you carried yourself here," he said. "That is not small. You keep returning to this," she said. "Because I am impressed," he said. "No one here impresses me. I was beginning to think the city had grown dull." "You must be very hard to impress," she said. "I am learning that I was simply looking in the wrong places," he replied. The way he said it made her heart beat faster, and she looked away, focusing on her coffee cup. "Do you have family?" she asked, changing the subject. "Children? A wife who scolds you for talking to strangers in cafes?" He almost choked on his coffee. "No wife," he said quickly. "No children." "Forgive me," she said, amused. "You reacted as if I had asked whether you have gout." "I reacted as if you had reminded me of conversations I am trying to postpone," he said lightly. "Conversations about marriage?" she guessed. "Something like that," he answered. "You do not wish to marry?" she asked. "It is not that I do not wish to," he said slowly. "It is that I do not wish to marry as one signs a treaty." She blinked. That is a very grand way to speak of a household clerk's wedding. He smiled faintly. I never said I was a clerk. You never said you are not, she countered. Touché, he murmured. There was a flicker of something in his eyes then. A shadow that did not belong to a simple traveller or clerk. Hannah felt suddenly that she was standing on the edge of something she did not understand, like the first step of a staircase disappearing into fog. Before she could form another question, the cafe's bell rang again. This time the hush that followed was different. The door swung open with more force than the usual guest would use. Cold air swept in, making candles flicker. Conversations stumbled and broke. Hannah glanced over her shoulder. Several men in uniform stood in the doorway, snow dusting their boots and shoulders. They were not officers out for coffee. Their coats bore the imperial crest. Swords hung at their sides, not drawn but present. The nearest table shifted to make way without being asked. The men moved into the room with the silent confidence of those who belonged to a different order than the rest. Hannah's stomach clenched. Guards. Her first thought was foolish. Had some thief slipped in behind her? Had she unknowingly sat at a criminal's table? Then she realized the guards were scanning the room with a specific focus, searching for someone they clearly expected to find. Strange, she whispered. They must be looking for someone important. Perhaps. Leonhardt said quietly. His tone had changed. It was tighter, more controlled. She looked back at him, puzzled. He had straightened in his chair, his jaw set, his eyes darker. For the first time she sensed steel under the smoothness. Are you all right? She asked. Yes, he said. Do not be afraid. I am not afraid, she lied. The guards moved between tables, their boots thudding dully. One of them spoke to the cafe owner, who gestured with a shaky hand toward the center of the room, as if denying all knowledge of anyone of interest. Hannah turned back toward the window, pretending intense interest in the frost patterns. Perhaps if she made herself small enough, they would ignore her. She felt, rather than saw, the exact moment they spotted their target. Their steps synchronized, turning in her direction. Her fingers tightened around her cup. They are coming this way, she murmured. I know, Leonhardt said softly. How can you know that? She asked, her voice barely above a breath. Because, he said, they are my guards. She stared at him. You're... what? Before she could make sense of the word, the guards reached their table. The captain, a broad-shouldered man with a scar along his chin, stopped, clicked his heels together, and bowed his head. Your Highness, he said clearly, and his voice carried to every corner of the cafe. Forgive our delay. The carriage is ready. The cafe went utterly still. Hannah felt the air around her change. It was as if every sound had been sucked out of the room, leaving only the echo of those two words, Your Highness. Her mind raced, grasping at stray facts. The well-cut coat, the careful gloves, the way he had spoken of being commanded to travel, the quiet authority that slipped through his casual tone. A prince, she thought wildly. I have been sitting beside a prince. Her heart hammered in her chest. Her first instinct was to stand, to apologize, to clear the way for him. But her leg was stiff, her chair too close to the table, her crutches wedged awkwardly. She could not move quickly, not without knocking something over, not with the entire room watching. Every eye seemed to swing between the kneeling guards and the lame girl at the prince's elbow. She could feel the judgments forming already. How ridiculous she must look, perched there like a crow on a carriage. Leonhardt, no, the prince, she corrected herself, rose slowly from his chair. The guards dropped to one knee in unison. Someone gasped near the door. A spoon clinked and rolled off a saucer. The cafe owner sank into a half-bow behind the counter, his mouth open. Hannah's pulse roared in her ears. Heat flooded her face, then drained away, leaving her cold and lightheaded. She wanted to disappear, to sink through the floorboards, to take back every word she had said. She heard a woman whisper sharply, "Look at her," right at his side. How presumptuous. Perhaps he was being charitable, another voice murmured. Charity, the first agreed. For the cripple, the word struck like a slap. Hannah's hands trembled on her lap. She tried to gather herself enough to stand and curtsy, something, anything that might show she understood her place. Her crutches caught against the table leg and slipped, clattering to the floor. The sound was loud in the stunned silence. She froze, half-risen, unbalanced. Without her crutches, she could not take another step. Humiliation flooded her. Of all moments to make a spectacle of herself, it had to be this one. She did not dare look at Leonhardt's face. She could not bear to see the polite distance that princes must wear. The captain's voice came again, urgent but low. "Your Highness, we should leave at once. There is concern at the palace." Leonhardt did not answer immediately. Instead, he bent down and picked up Hannah's fallen crutches with his own hands. The gesture sent another ripple through the room. He set the crutches carefully against the table, steadying them so they would not slip again. Then he turned, not to the guards, but to Hannah. His eyes met hers. They were not amused. They were not embarrassed. They were determined. He straightened to his full height, the small space seeming suddenly too narrow around him. The guards waited, kneeling. The guests waited, holding their breath. Hannah waited. Her heart caught somewhere between dread and a fragile, desperate hope. Leonhardt looked once at the captain, then back at her, and the entire cafe leaned toward him as he opened his mouth. Then he turned fully to Hannah and said, "Fräulein Weiss, thank you for keeping me company," Leonhardt said, clearly enough for the whole room to hear. "It has been the most honest hour of my morning." A murmur ran through the cafe at the sound of his voice. He had not called her girl. He had not called her poor thing. He had called her Fräulein Weiss. Hannah stared at him, unable to speak. He turned to the guards, who were still kneeling. "Stand," he said. They rose at once. "You have found me," he went on, his tone now edged with the calm authority of someone used to being obeyed. "You may inform those who are worried that I am alive, well, and capable of finishing a cup of coffee." The captain cleared his throat. "Your Highness, the court is in some agitation. It is not fitting." "It is not fitting," Leonhardt interrupted, "for my escort to interrupt the peace of a public house more than necessary. The citizens of Vienna are not an enemy to be invaded." The captain flushed. "Of course, Your Highness, we only—" "You will wait outside," Leonhardt said. "I will finish my conversation, and then I will join you." The captain hesitated, torn between protocol and his prince. "Outside," Leonhardt repeated, not raising his voice but letting the word carry the weight of command. At last the captain bowed stiffly. "Yes, Your Highness." The guards turned and moved back toward the door, their departure a smaller storm than their arrival. The bell jingled behind them. The room did not relax, it just redirected its attention entirely onto the table by the window. Leonhardt sat down again. Hannah was still half risen without her crutches. He pulled the chair gently toward the table to steady her, then rested his hands lightly on the back. "You need not stand for me," he said, in a low voice meant only for her. "You were here first." "I should." Her throat felt tight. "Your Highness, I did not know. I would never have. I should have. Oh, I do not even know what I should have done." "You did exactly what you should have," he said. "You asked for a chair when you needed one." Her heart hammered. "You are a prince." "And you are Hannah Weiss," he replied. "It appears we are both more complicated than we first appeared." She swallowed. "Everyone is staring." "Let them," he said again. "You can say that," she whispered. "You are allowed to be looked at." He paused, then nodded once. "Very well," he said quietly. "Then I will give them something worth looking at." Before she understood what he meant, he spoke louder, his voice carrying easily. "Fräulein Weiss," he said, "will you permit me to escort you home? The streets are treacherous today, and I would be a poor prince indeed if I let a lady who shared her table fight the snow alone." The word lady hung in the air. Hannah's breath caught. "Your Highness, that is not necessary." He lowered his voice again. "Do you wish to refuse because you truly do not want my help, or because you are afraid of their faces?" She froze. Honesty pressed behind her teeth. Finally she whispered, "Because of their faces." "Then allow me to offend their faces," he said gently. "It will do them good." She let out a shaky breath that might have been a laugh if she had not been so close to tears. "I do not want to be a spectacle," she said. "You were not the one who knelt with swords at your side," he replied. The cafe owner, emboldened now that he knew who his guest was, hurried over, bowing. "Your Highness," he gushed, "we are honored beyond words. If you had known, Leonhardt said evenly, "you might have denied a tired young woman a chair. I am glad you did not know." The man's mouth flapped open and shut. "Of course, Your Highness. Of course, I would never—" I am certain you will remember today when the next exhausted customer comes through your door, Leonhardt said, perhaps even if she carries no fine purse. Yes, Your Highness, certainly, absolutely. And her coffee, Leonhardt added, is to be written on my account, do you understand? Perfectly, Your Highness. He turned back to Hannah. Will you allow me to help you stand? He asked. A prince asking permission to help her. Her instinct was to refuse, to insist she needed no one, to cling to the hard-won pride she wore like armor. But the room's weight pressed on her shoulders. Her leg throbbed, and something in Leonhardt's steady eyes told her that denying him now would not be an act of courage but of fear. Yes, she said finally. Thank you. He stepped closer and offered his arm, not as one offers support to a child, but as a gentleman offers his arm to a partner about to waltz. She placed her hand lightly on his sleeve and pushed herself up, shifting her weight onto her good leg. Her balance faltered just for a second. His arm did not. When she was upright, he retrieved her crutches and guided them into her hands. There, he said softly. Now we make our escape. She tried to smile. It feels more like a parade. A poor parade if they only watch and do not throw flowers, he replied. A few people had the decency to look away. Most did not. Hannah felt their eyes following every move as Leonhardt led her through the maze of tables. As they passed the woman who had whispered about charity, the woman dropped her gaze and curtsied, more to the prince than from remorse. Hannah saw the movement from the corner of her eye and straightened a little more. At the door, Leonhardt paused and turned back to the room. Good day, he said calmly. I recommend the broth. A nervous ripple of laughter moved through the cafe. People bowed in their chairs. Someone clapped once and then stopped, uncertain. The bell above the door rang again as they stepped out into the cold. Snow lay in uneven patches along the street, trodden into grey by carriages and boots. The air bit at Hannah's cheeks. The sudden brightness after the dim cafe made her squint. A black carriage waited at the curb, polished to a shine that even the dirty snow could not dull. The imperial crest gleamed on its door. The horses stamped and snorted clouds of steam. The captain moved forward at once. For your highness, he said, if you please. One moment, Leonhardt said, holding up a hand. He turned to Hannah. Where do you live? He asked quietly. Near the Freihausviertel, she said, suddenly conscious of the distance between her modest street and the gleaming carriage. We will take you there, he said. No, she blurted. Your highness, that is too much. My neighbors will think... They will think all kinds of things. Let them, he said. It is a day for them to think. I'm serious, she insisted. My father is not well. If he sees a royal carriage in front of the house, he may die of fright. Leonhardt's expression shifted at once. Your father is ill? He asked. Not ill, she corrected quickly. Just tired. His eyes, his chest. He worries, that is all. Then we will not alarm him, Leonhardt said. We will stop at the end of the street. My men will accompany you the rest of the way, discreetly. The captain cleared his throat. Your Highness, it is not conventional to provide escort to a... Leonhardt's gaze snapped to him. To a citizen of this city? He asked. Who has done nothing but share her table with me? The captain shifted his weight. I only meant... I am not interested in what you meant, Leonhardt said quietly. Only in what you will do. You will see Fräulein Weiss safely to the corner of her street. If anyone objects, they may speak to me. Yes, Your Highness, the captain said at once. Hannah's head swam. You really do not have to... I know, he said. I wish to. He offered his hand to help her into the carriage. The step was high. With her crutches, she could not have managed it easily, without some undignified scrambling. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his and let him steady her as she climbed in. The interior smelled of leather and cedar. She had never been inside anything so fine. The seat was soft under her, so different from the hard chairs she usually chose so she could anchor herself. Leonhardt sat opposite her, leaving a respectful distance. The carriage jolted forward. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city moved past outside, blurred by the frosted windows. I have offended you, she said abruptly. He looked taken aback. How? By talking to you as if you were... She searched for the word. Ordinary. A smile tugged at his mouth. It was a relief, she blinked. A relief. Do you know, he said, that there are people who speak to my coat, or to the space above my head, but not to my face? I can imagine, she said. They ask about my health as if I were an old dog, he went on. They praise my handwriting without reading a word. They laugh at my jokes before I have finished them. It is exhausting. And I, she said slowly, talked about waltzes and bad ink and soup. Exactly, he replied. She studied him. Why did you not tell me who you are? Would you have spoken differently, he asked. Of course, she said. I would have shut my mouth entirely and stared at my spoon. Then I am glad I did not tell you, he said simply. She looked down at her hands. People will think I wanted something from you. What do you want from me? He asked. Nothing, she said quickly. I want my leg not to hurt. I want my father to eat something better than bread and potatoes. I want the music I copy to be played by someone who does not murder every note. That is all. These are excellent wishes, he said. Not one of them requires a prince. That is why I chose them, she replied. He laughed again, softly. The carriage turned, wheels grinding on the icy street. Your Highness, she said after a moment, what should I call you? I am afraid just Leonhard will no longer do. In the cafe it was enough, he said. Out here, you may call me what is comfortable. If you wish to avoid scandal, you should call me Your Highness and speak very little. If you wish to annoy my mother, you may continue with Leonhard. She stared at him. You would let me annoy your mother. It is a tempting thought, he said. Is she very frightening? She asked. She is very practiced, he said. There is a difference. Practiced at what? Hannah asked. At making the world behave as she wishes, he replied. Hannah shook her head. Then I would rather not annoy her. I have enough enemies. Who says she must be your enemy? He asked quietly. She did not answer. The idea of a princess, dowager or otherwise, looking at her without contempt was too big to fit into her mind. The carriage began to slow. We are near your quarter, Leonhard said. Where should they stop? The corner by the old well, she said. If they go farther, every curtain in the street will tear itself in two. He knocked on the roof. The carriage rolled to a stop. The captain appeared at the door, opening it carefully. This is far enough, Leonhard told him. You will accompany Fräulein Weiss to her house. You will do so politely. You will not mention my name. Yes, Your Highness. Hannah gripped her crutches. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For the coffee. For the soup. For everything. You have done more for me than I for you, he said. That cannot be true, she protested. It is, he said. You have reminded me what it feels like to be spoken to as a man, she swallowed. And what shall I do with that? Keep it, he said, so that when someone speaks to you as less than a woman, you know they are wrong. Her throat tightened. He stepped out first, then turned and held out his hand again. She took it and climbed down, careful on the high step. The wind cut through her cloak. Her familiar streets felt suddenly different, as if someone had drawn a line of gold around them. She stepped back, away from the carriage. Leonhard stood in the snow, the horses blowing steam behind him. Good day, Fräulein Weiss, he said. Good day, Your Highness, she replied. He inclined his head, then signaled to the captain. The guards fell into step beside her as she started down the narrow lane. She did not look back until she reached the well. When she dared a glance, the carriage was already turning away, disappearing around a corner, taking with it the brief, impossible world of warm broth and princes in cafes. Her father nearly knocked over the chair when he saw the uniforms outside. Hannah, he cried, hand to his chest. What in heaven's name have you done? Nothing, she said quickly, moving to calm him. Truly, a customer sent me home with a guard because of the snow. That is all. A customer? He repeated, disbelief in every syllable. A very peculiar one, she admitted. I will tell you later. Sit, Papa. Your heart. He lowered himself slowly, still eyeing the doorway as if another carriage might burst through it. When the guards left, the house seemed to exhale. She did not tell him everything, not that day. She mentioned the cafe, the unexpected kindness, the offer of a ride. She called Leonhard a well-dressed gentleman with good manners and a strange sense of humor. Her father relaxed bit by bit, soothed by the normalcy of her voice. That night, alone in her small room, she pressed her fingers to her lips and tried to hear his laughter again. Prince, she thought, testing the word in private. It sounded like something from a story, not from her own life. She told herself she would never see him again. She was wrong. Days passed. The snow on the streets thawed, froze, thawed again. Work returned in its usual trickle. 2 waltzes to copy, a song for voice and piano, a set of church hymns. Then, one morning, a man in neat but ordinary clothes came to the shop. He carried a letter with a small seal Hannah did not recognize. "For Fräulein Hannah Weiss," he said, bowing slightly. She wiped ink from her fingers and took it cautiously. "From whom?" her father asked. "From the Office of Court Music," the messenger replied. "There is a need for a reliable copyist." Hannah's heart stumbled. "The court?" her father repeated, eyes round. "You must have the wrong address." "The name is correct," the man said. "I was directed here." He left as soon as the letter changed hands, as if afraid the modest little shop might stain his boots. Hannah broke the seal with unsteady fingers. The letter was brief. The royal household required assistance in preparing and copying scores for an upcoming series of concerts. Her work had been recommended. If she was willing, she was to present herself to a certain official at the palace in 3 days' time. Her father watched her face. "Well?" he asked. "What does it say?" She passed him the letter. He read it slowly, moving his lips, then looked up, torn between pride and fear. "The palace," he said. "Yes," she whispered. "You cannot climb those stairs," he said at once. "You heard the doctor. Too much strain and your leg—" "I climb worse stairs every week," she answered quietly. "You know what people are like there," he went on. "They will not see your work. They will see your crutches." "That happens here as well," she said. He looked down at the letter again. "The pay would help," he admitted. "The landlord has been patient, but his patience is not a charity." "I know," she said. "Do you wish to go?" he asked. She paused. Images tumbled in her mind. Polished floors, high ceilings, eyes that weighed and measured, and one pair of eyes that had not. "I do not know," she said honestly. "I am afraid." "Then we can refuse," he said. "I am also curious," she added. He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "You are your mother's daughter." "What would she say?" Hannah asked. "That if the palace wishes to pay you for doing what you already do well," he said, "you should at least go hear their offer and make them suffer your honesty." Hannah smiled helplessly. He reached across the table and took her hand. "Go," he said. "Walk carefully. Walk proudly. And if they treat you badly, you come home and we will curse them together." She squeezed his fingers. "Very well." 3 days later, she stood at the foot of the palace steps. They were as long and grand as she had imagined, stretching upward between stone balustrades. People passed by her in a stream, servants, clerks, gentlemen, ladies. No one paused to stare yet. She was outside their true world. She set the tip of her crutch on the first step. One at a time, she told herself. One at a time. By the time she reached the top, her arms burned and her stump throbbed, but she stood straight. Inside, the floors gleamed, the ceilings soared. Her reflection flashed in polished surfaces, small, plain, leaning on crutches. She followed the directions in the letter, heart pounding with each step. Not everyone noticed her. Some were too busy carrying papers or instruments. But enough did. A young footman's eyes widened. A maid smothered a giggle behind her hand. 2 minor officials whispered as she passed. She kept her gaze forward. The official she had been told to find turned out to be a thin man with ink-stained fingers of his own. "Are you our Fräulein Weiss?" he asked, peering over spectacles. "Yes," she said. "Your samples were quite legible," he said. "We have a backlog. You will work in the music archives most days. Occasionally you may be called to deliver scores. You will be paid monthly. Is this agreeable?" "Yes," she said, feeling light-headed. "Very agreeable." "You will not be required to climb too many stairs," he added, flicking a quick glance at her crutches. "We can use the smaller rooms below when necessary." The consideration surprised her. "Thank you," he grunted. "We care more about notes being in the right place than feet." It was as close to kindness as any bureaucrat could come. Her first days passed in a blur of ink and paper. The archives smelled of dust and old glue. Shelves towered with scores. She lost herself in clefs and key signatures, stopping only when her hand cramped. Some people were indifferent. Some were kind, like the violinist who thanked her for saving him an hour of copying. Some were less kind. Did they run out of normal clerks? A young page snickered to his friend as she passed. At least if she drops something, she will hear it, the other replied. Hannah pretended not to hear. She had long practice, and yet, even with the small pricks of cruelty, there was satisfaction. The work mattered. The music she copied would be played by real musicians, heard by real ears. She was not invisible here, even if some people wished she were. On the fourth afternoon, the archive official handed her a stack of freshly copied orchestral parts. "These are for the private drawing room of Her Highness the Dowager Princess," he said. "You will take them yourself. Do not be late. Do not speak unless spoken to." Hannah's stomach dropped. "The Dowager Princess?" "Yes," he said impatiently. "She has her own gatherings. Music, cards, that sort of thing. The prince attends when he cannot avoid it. You will go along the inner corridor, third door on the right. Knock, wait." She took the stack carefully. "Yes," she said. The corridor to the drawing room was lined with portraits in gilded frames, eyes following her as she moved. Her crutches sounded loud on the smooth floor. She reached the door, slightly ajar. Voices drifted out. "Announce it before the week is over," a woman was saying, her tone measured and composed. "The Archduchess's uncle grows impatient. He wishes assurance that Leonhardt will not delay." The Dowager Princess, Hannah thought at once. There was no mistaking that calm authority. A man answered, voice lower, smoother. "Your Highness, we must consider the prince's feelings. He is reluctant." "Reluctant," the Dowager repeated. "He has had years to indulge his reluctance. His personal tastes cannot overturn the needs of our house. This alliance would secure Hollenberg's position for a generation." Alliance, Hollenberg. The names rang like distant church bells. Hannah stood very still, hands tightening on the music. "Leonhardt understands his duty," the man continued. "He will not defy you publicly." "He will not be given the opportunity," the Dowager said. "We will present the betrothal as a fact, not a question. When he stands beside the Archduchess and hears the announcement, he will do what is required. There will be no room for sentiment." Hannah's breath caught. Betrothal. Archduchess. Leonhardt. She felt as if someone had reached into her chest and squeezed. Of course, she thought numbly. Of course a prince must marry a princess. Of course his life cannot bend because a lame girl in a cafe listened to him talk. Her fingers trembled on the paper. One sheet slid sideways. Behind her, a servant coughed politely. "You must go in," he whispered. "They are waiting." Hannah swallowed hard, gathered the music tighter, and nudged the door open with the tip of her crutch. Conversation stopped. The drawing room was bright and orderly. At a small table near the window sat a woman in deep blue silk, her hair streaked with silver, her posture perfect. Rings glittered on her fingers. Her eyes were sharp and cool, and when they fell on Hannah, they took in everything. Crutches, plain dress, flushed cheeks. In one efficient glance. Beside her stood a man Hannah recognized from overheard descriptions. Count Riedel, advisor to the prince. The Dowager Princess spoke first. "And what?" she said, her voice quiet but cutting. "Have we here?" Hannah's pulse thudded in her ears. She dipped her head as much as the music in her hands allowed. "Your Highness," she said, keeping her voice low, "scores from the archive. For this evening." Count Riedel stepped forward, taking the top folder and glancing through it as if to confirm that ink on paper still behaved as expected. "The new selections," he said to the Dowager Princess. "On time." The Dowager did not look at the music. Her gaze remained on Hannah. "You came from the lower offices?" she asked. "Yes, Your Highness," Hannah replied. "With those," the Dowager added, nodding once toward the crutches, "you climbed all the way to this floor." "Yes, Your Highness," Hannah repeated. "Is there no boy who can be sent?" the Dowager asked quietly, still studying her. Count Riedel cleared his throat. "The archive clerk said she was the most reliable. The others were occupied." "I see," the Dowager murmured. "And what is your name?" "Hannah Weiss, Your Highness." "Daughter of?" the Dowager asked. "Jakob Weiss, Your Highness. He sells music in the Freihaus Viertel." "Ah," the Dowager said, "so you are familiar with ink and paper. That is something. At least they did not send a scullery maid." Hannah kept still, the words pricking but not drawing blood. She had heard worse. The Dowager's eyes dropped once more, briefly, to the wooden leg visible beneath the hem of Hannah's skirt. "How did this happen?" she asked. "A fever, Your Highness," Hannah said. when I was a child. And yet you came here, the Dowager said, to work in a place of many stairs and polished floors. Yes, Your Highness, Hannah said. The palace asked for help. I have 2 hands, they can copy notes. Count Riedel's mouth twitched, as if he had not expected such a direct answer. The Dowager's expression did not change. You speak plainly. I copy plainly as well, Your Highness, Hannah said. Let us hope your pen is more cautious than your tongue, the Dowager replied, but there was almost a trace of amusement under the mild rebuke. The door behind Hannah opened. She did not have to turn to know who had entered. The air itself seemed to notice. Mother, Leonhardt said, you asked for me. His voice reached her before he did. She fought the urge to glance back. She stood very straight, music balanced carefully in her shaking hands. The Dowager's gaze shifted past Hannah. I did, she said. We are discussing the program for the next gathering. Count Riedel believes too many marches will make our guests feel like they are still on the parade ground. Then perhaps fewer marches, Leonhardt said. Unless you wish them to begin saluting between courses. Count Riedel smiled politely. Leonhardt stepped farther into the room. From the corner of her eye, Hannah saw him stop short when he recognized her. Fräulein Weiss, he said quietly. She turned, because not turning would have felt like rudeness. Your Highness, she said, dipping her head. I brought the scores. So I see, he said. The Dowager's brows lifted slightly. You know her. Yes, Leonhardt replied. How? The Dowager asked. We met in the city, he said, in a cafe. She kept me from dying of boredom, which is more than I can say for most courtiers. Hannah's cheeks burned. The Dowager's gaze sharpened. Indeed. Count Riedel's eyes narrowed, measuring. Hannah wished the floor would open and swallow her ink-stained shoes. I spoke with her before I knew who she was, Leonhardt added calmly, and before she knew who I was. Yet, the guards knew, the Dowager said dryly. Leonhardt did not flinch. They corrected my oversight. The Dowager held his gaze for a long moment, then turned back to Hannah. You may leave the music there, she said, indicating a side table with a graceful tilt of her head. Be sure there are no missing parts. We will not have a violinist sulking because the second page went astray in the corridor. Yes, Your Highness, Hannah said. She moved carefully, feeling Leonhardt's eyes on her as she crossed to the table. The room seemed smaller than the archive, more intimate, every sound magnified. As she set the scores down, she heard the Dowager say, See that such errands are handled more discreetly in future, Count Riedel. We do not need the entire household gossiping about my sons and acquaintances. Hannah froze for a heartbeat. Acquaintances. The word was not cruel, but it was not friendly either. Yes, Your Highness, Count Riedel replied. Fräulein Weiss, the Dowager said. Hannah turned at once. Yes, Your Highness? You will continue your work, the Dowager said. If the archives value your hand, that is sufficient. But you will remember that your world and my son's do not intersect beyond paper and ink. Is that clear? Hannah's throat was dry. Yes, Your Highness. Leonhardt shifted. Mother... The Dowager lifted her hand a fraction, silencing him without looking away from Hannah. Is that clear? She repeated. Yes, Hannah said again. Perfectly clear. Good, the Dowager said. You may go. Hannah bowed as best she could, then turned toward the door. As she passed Leonhardt, he murmured, I am sorry. She shook her head slightly, not trusting herself to speak. If she let any words out, they would spill like water and never stop. In the corridor, the air felt thinner. She leaned against the wall for a moment, eyes closed, forcing her breathing to steady. Her world and my son's do not intersect. She had known that. She had always known it. Hearing it spoken aloud only carved the line deeper. She returned to the archives and buried herself in work. For the rest of the day, she copied notes with ruthless focus, refusing to think about blue silk, cool eyes, or princes in drawing rooms. In the days that followed, she did her best to avoid Leonhardt. If she heard his steps in a corridor, she turned down another. If she saw him ahead, speaking with an official, she pretended to remember an errand in the opposite direction. When he passed through the archive once with a group of visitors, she kept her eyes firmly on the page in front of her and pretended to be deaf. It did not work forever. One afternoon, as she carried a bundle of finished parts to the storage room, He stepped out from a side door directly into her path. She nearly collided with him. "Forgive me," she said quickly, stepping back. "There is nothing to forgive," he said. "You were not the one hiding behind doors." She stared at him, startled. "You were waiting." "Yes," he said. "You have been avoiding me." "I have been working," she said. "That too," he conceded. She shifted the music in her arms. "I am busy, Your Highness. The concerts—" "Hannah," he said, dropping the title. The sound of her name on his tongue made her chest tighten. "I asked you to call me Fräulein Weiss," she said. "You did not ask," he replied. "You obeyed. There is a difference." She glanced around. The corridor was empty for the moment, but any door might open. "Your Highness, this is not wise," she murmured. "If someone sees us—" "They see us," he said, "all the time. Their eyes do not create something that does not exist." She hugged the music closer, as if it could shield her. "I heard your mother," she said, "in the drawing room." His expression flickered. "How much?" "Enough to know you are to be betrothed," she said, "to an archduchess, for alliances, for generations." He exhaled slowly. "You were not meant to hear that. Yet I did," she said. "And now I understand why the Dowager Princess spoke as she did." "Hannah," he began. "You are a prince," she continued, talking quickly to keep him from saying something she feared to hear. "I am a copyist. I walk with wood instead of bone. We do not belong in the same conversation except about paper." "That is nonsense," he said sharply. "It is the only sense that will keep you safe," she answered. "I am not a child to be kept safe from conversation," he said. "Do you think a few words in a corridor will topple the empire?" "No," she said, "but they can make your life harder. They already whisper because of the cafe, because of the carriage, because of the guards at my door." He grimaced. "Do they whisper to you?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "Mostly they whisper to each other. I am used to being the subject of whispers." "And I am tired of being the subject of ceremonies," he muttered. "Your Highness," she said softly, "you are going to marry a woman you barely know. You will stand beside her in crowds and give speeches and be looked at. That is not a life I envy, but it is the life you have." "And what life do you have?" he asked. "One with ink and paper and a father who needs me," she said. "It is enough." "Is it?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "It must be." He looked at her for a long moment, searching her face. "In the cafe," he said, "you spoke to me as if I were no one special. You told me about a doctor who stole your waltz. You laughed at my gloves. Do you remember?" Of course she remembered. The memory was carved into her like a second limb. "Yes," she said. "I remember too," he said. "I remember thinking, here is someone who is not afraid to see me as a man, not a title. Do you know how rare that is?" "It is easy to see you as a man when I do not know you are a prince," she said. "It is less easy when the palace walls whisper your name." "Hannah," he said again. She shook her head. "You cannot ask me to stand between you and your duty," she said. "I am not strong enough for that." "I am not asking you to stand between," he said. "I am asking you to stand beside. There is a difference." "There is not," she insisted. "Not in their eyes." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "In my eyes there is," he said. "You have changed something in me. You have made me look at the world I walk through and ask whether I wish to spend my life pretending I feel nothing. That is not a small thing, Hannah. You may wish to pretend it never happened, but I cannot." Her hand tightened on the music until the edges bit her skin. "You are kind," she said. "You are lonely. I understand that. But loneliness is not a reason to shatter your mother's plans, your house's alliances, your everything." "Who says I wish to shatter them?" he asked. "I simply refuse to be deaf to my own heart." His words hung in the air between them, heavy and unspokenly clear. She felt her defenses tremble. "You must not talk to me like this," she whispered. "It is dangerous." "For whom?" he asked. "For both of us," she said. Footsteps echoed at the far end of the corridor. Leonhardt stepped back at once. "Tear my music more slowly next time," he said aloud, his tone suddenly light and formal. "The strings like their parts to be in one piece." Hannah understood at once and nodded, playing along. "Yes, Your Highness," she said. Two footmen walked past, glancing curiously at the prince and the girl with ink on her fingers. Seeing nothing overt, they moved on. Leonhardt's mask slipped back into place. "We will speak again," he said quietly. She did not answer. Days turned into a week. The palace buzzed with preparations. Servants changed curtains. Florists discussed arrangements. The kitchens filled with lists of delicacies. Even those far from the center of power knew something important was coming. The betrothal, a maid whispered in the servants' hall. They say the Archduchess is beautiful. They always say that, a footman replied. What else can they say? That she has a temper like vinegar and feet like a plough horse? Hannah kept her eyes on her plate and pretended her ears were clogged with wax. Work multiplied. More guests meant more music. The archive hummed with feverish copying. One afternoon the official called Hannah over. The Dowager Princess is holding a small musical evening on the eve of the announcement, he said. Some pieces are to be tried in a more intimate setting. They require your assistance. My assistance, she repeated. You will attend, he said, in the back. You will make sure the scores are in order, handle any last-minute copying, attend to the conductor's requests. You will be paid extra for the hours. She swallowed. Will there be many people? A modest number, he said, half the nobility instead of all of it. She forced a smile. Then it will almost be a quiet night. He snorted. Quiet and nobles do not live in the same sentence. Do you accept? She thought of her father's cough, the landlord's frown, the cost of coal. Yes, she said, I accept. An hour before the gathering, she stood in her small room, staring at her only decent dress. It was simple, dark blue, with a collar she had altered herself. It was not new, but it was clean. She smoothed it over the curve where her real leg met the prosthetic. Do not pretend to be what you are not, she told her reflection. Only try not to shame those scores. She put her hair up as neatly as she could, wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, and made her way back to the palace as evening fell. The drawing room glowed with lamplight. Musicians tuned their instruments in a corner. Servants moved like shadows, setting out chairs. Hannah stood near the music stands, her stack of scores on a side table ready. Guests began to arrive. Ladies in silk and lace, gentlemen in dark coats and crisp shirts. The air filled with the soft rustle of fabric and the low murmur of greetings. Hannah kept to the edge, watching the conductor's hands, ready to move when he snapped his fingers. Fräulein Weiss, the archive official murmured, passing her. Remember, you are here to work, not to be seen. That part I know, she said. The first piece went smoothly. The orchestra played, the guests swayed as if already dancing in their minds. Hannah followed along in her head, checking for errors. During the pause, she noticed Leonhard across the room, standing near a window with Count Riedel. His face looked composed, but his jaw was tight. A few guests drifted toward him, drawn by rank and curiosity. He met her eyes once, briefly, then looked away, as if even that glance might be counted and weighed. She turned her attention back to the music. Excuse me, a voice said behind her. She turned. A young woman stood there, a few years older than Hannah, draped in pale green silk that shimmered when she moved. Her hair was arranged in perfect waves. Her lips were curved in a smile that did not reach her eyes. Yes, Hannah said. You are with the musicians? The woman asked. I am a copyist, Hannah said. I help with the scores. Ah, the woman said. Of course. Her gaze drifted down to the crutches at Hannah's side. How very brave of you to be here, she added. Brave? Hannah repeated. To appear in society, the woman said, her tone sweet as sugar. With such a burden. I should not have the courage. Hannah's stomach clenched. I am here to work, she said, not to appear. Still, the woman went on, it is admirable. One hears that His Highness has a tender heart, especially for those less fortunate. It is kind of him to involve you. I am employed because my handwriting is neat, Hannah said more sharply than she intended. Of course, the woman said, as if humoring a child. I meant no offense. She leaned in a little. You must not misunderstand his consideration, she added in a mock confidential tone. Princes often show charity. It is their duty, but that does not mean they can choose as freely as lesser men. Hannah's chest burned. Choose what? She asked, though she already knew. Companions, the woman said lightly. Wives, partners. You see, when one is born to such a position, one must marry for more than affection. Hannah forced herself to keep her voice calm. I have never expected a prince to marry a copyist, she said. You need not worry. The woman's smile sharpened. I am not worried, she said. I simply feel protective of him. We all do. It would be cruel to let him wander into entanglements that will only bring him pain. She let her eyes drift deliberately to Hannah's leg. And ridicule, she added softly. Hannah felt as if someone had knocked the breath from her. Do you know him well? Hannah asked, struggling to keep her tone even. We move in the same circles, the woman said. I am Countess von Lilien. Perhaps you have heard the name. I copy scores, Hannah said. Not gossip. The Countess's eyes flashed, then her smile returned. You are direct, she said. It must be refreshing for him. But understand this, Fräulein. Weiss, is it? The prince will soon be betrothed to a woman of suitable station. It is generous of him to show kindness to someone in your position. You should accept it with grace, and not confuse it with possibilities. Hannah's hand shook on the edge of the table. I do not confuse anything, she said. I know my position very well. Good, the Countess said. Then we understand each other. She turned slightly, making sure her next words reached not only Hannah but the little cluster of guests nearby. Besides, she added, with a tinkling laugh, can you imagine a prince choosing a bride who could not even dance a simple waltz without stumbling? The scandal would never end. A few people chuckled uneasily. One man looked away, as if even he found the remark too cruel. Hannah felt the heat rise up her neck. Her throat ached. She wanted desperately to lift her crutch and walk away, but the floor seemed glued to her feet. The Countess smiled, satisfied, and turned as if to rejoin her friends. Countess von Lilien. Leonhardt's voice cut through the room like a bow across strings. The conversation around them faltered. The Countess turned back, smile brightening. Your Highness, she said, we were just— I heard you, he said. Silence fell. Colour drained from the Countess's face. Your Highness, He stepped closer, his expression controlled but icy. You spoke of scandal, he said quietly, though every ear in the room strained to hear. Let me tell you what I find scandalous. A prickle ran through the guests. I find it scandalous, he continued, that a lady of noble birth would use her position to humiliate someone who is here to work, not to entertain your cruelty. I find it scandalous that anyone in this house would consider a physical difference a subject for mockery, and I find it most scandalous that you would presume to declare what my heart may or may not consider possible. The Countess opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Your Highness, I only meant— You meant to wound, he said. You succeeded. You will now do something more difficult. You will reflect. Whispers rose, then died as he swept his gaze across the room. Fräulein Weiss is employed here for her skill, he said. She is under this household's protection. Anyone who forgets that forgets my wishes. Hannah wanted to vanish. She also wanted to stand taller than she ever had in her life. The Countess's eyes glittered with humiliation. Your Highness, she said stiffly, if my words were misinterpreted, I apologize. They were not misinterpreted, he said. Apologize anyway. She inhaled sharply, then turned to Hannah. Fräulein Weiss, she said, the title dragged from her. If I caused offense, I regret it. Hannah met her gaze. Words do not fall from your mouth by accident, Countess, she said quietly. But I accept that you regret being heard. A few people hid smiles behind their hands. Leonhardt's mouth twitched just slightly. Thank you, Countess, he said. You may return to your circle. Her curtsy was so stiff it might have cracked. She swept away, her silk dress rustling like angry leaves. The room buzzed with hushed comments. Bold. Risky. Defending a servant? Before the announcement? Did you see her face? Hannah felt dizzy. Leonhardt looked at her. Are you all right? He asked softly. No, she said, but I will be. He nodded, as if that answer was enough. Return to your place, he said. You have work to do. She almost laughed at the ordinariness of it. Yes, Your Highness, she said. She moved back to the music stand, her shoulders straight, her heart pounding. For the rest of the evening, no one spoke to her unless it was to ask for a missing page. Later, in the quiet of the archive, she heard the aftermath. 2 footmen whispered outside the door. They say the Dowager is furious, one said, to rebuke Countess von Lilien in front of everyone. And for a lame copyist, the other added. Imagine, he has courage, the first said. He has madness, the second replied. On the eve of a betrothal, he creates a scene for a cripple. The families will not like it. Hannah's hands shook over the page, ink blotched. She blotted it quickly, heart aching. The next morning, the palace felt different, tense, charged. In a quiet corridor behind closed doors, the Dowager and Count Riedel faced Leonhardt. Hannah was not there to hear, but servants carried stories the way drafts carried dust. "You humiliated a countess," the Dowager said. "She humiliated a member of this household," Leonhardt replied. "I corrected her." "In public," the Dowager snapped, "on the eve of an alliance we have worked years to secure." "If our allies' confidence can be shaken by my courtesy toward a copyist," he said, "then it was never strong." Count Riedel intervened. "Your Highness, we do not question your intentions, only your timing. You are to be betrothed. People already speculate that you are restless. These displays will only fuel stories." "Let them talk," Leonard said. "They will not only talk," the Dowager said coldly. "They will withdraw support. They will reconsider agreements. Do you understand the weight of that?" "I understand the weight you place on it," he said. She drew herself up. "I understand more than you do. I was married for reasons larger than myself. I learned to put my heart where it caused the least damage. You will do the same." "I will not marry with contempt in my heart," he said quietly. "You will marry with duty there," she replied. "Duty is the spine that keeps a house upright when hearts fail." "And what of the people beneath that house?" he asked. "Those who cannot walk its stairs without pain. Those who work until their eyes blur. They will benefit from your stability," she said. "They do not need your fixations." Silence. "Is that how you see her?" he asked. "A fixation?" "I see a girl who limps through our halls and turns my son's head," the Dowager said. "A girl who will be torn apart by this world if you drag her into its center. You would not be saving her. You would be handing her to wolves." "And leaving her at the door will save her?" he asked. "It will let her live," the Dowager said, "with her father, in her quarter, with her work. That is more than many have," Count Riedel added carefully. "Your Highness, for the sake of your future and her peace, have as little to do with her as possible. Once the betrothal is announced, this attention will fade. Do not make it harder than it must be." The message filtered through the palace in fragments. Hannah received it in the form of silence. Days passed without seeing Leonhardt. He did not appear in the archives. He did not pass her in corridors. If he attended rehearsals, he did so at hours when she was not there. She told herself this was good. This was right. Her chest felt hollow anyway. One afternoon, as she sorted pages, the archive official approached. "After the announcement," he said without preamble, "our needs will change. Fewer new pieces, more ceremonial ones. We may not require as much assistance. Be prepared." She nodded, numb. "I understand. I will recommend you to others," he added gruffly. "Your work is good." "Thank you," she said. The day of the betrothal announcement arrived. The palace glittered, courtyards filled with carriages. Guests flowed into the great hall in a river of silk and black cloth. Hannah's tasks were light. Most music had been prepared. She was told she might leave early. "You will not need me?" she asked. "Not today," the official said. "This is more speeches than songs." She packed her pens and papers carefully. As she made her way down the grand staircase, leaning on her crutches, the noise from the great hall rose like a distant tide. At the bottom of the stairs, she saw him. Leonhardt stood near the entrance to the great hall, dressed in formal attire, a sash across his chest. The Dowager stood beside him, hand on his arm. Count Riedel hovered nearby. Guests passed in front of him, bowing, curtsying. He nodded, his face composed. For a brief moment the path cleared. His eyes lifted and found her on the staircase. The world seemed to narrow to that thin line between them. She stopped, gripping the railing. They looked at each other. In his gaze, she saw so many things she did not dare name. Apology, frustration, something softer. She forced herself to smile, just a little. It said, "It is all right. Go. Do what you must." His expression tightened. He inclined his head, the gesture small but deliberate. Then the Dowager tugged his arm gently, and he turned toward the great hall. Hannah stood there for another heartbeat, then resumed her descent. She reached the side corridor that led to one of the lesser exits and turned away from the noise. From the great hall, the voices grew louder, echoing off marble. She paused near an archway, drawn despite herself. Through the opening, she could see a sliver of the hall, tall windows, banners, the backs of many heads. She could not see Leonhardt now, but she could hear. An official's voice rang out, formal and resonant. "Honored guests, we are gathered today to celebrate the union of two noble houses." The speech went on. Names, titles, history. Hannah barely heard the words. She leaned lightly against the cool stone, her leg aching, her heart heavier. "Prince Leonhard von Hollenberg," the official intoned. Her fingers tightened on the handle of her crutch. "And Her Imperial Highness, Archduchess Amalia." There was a murmur of approval, polite applause. Hannah closed her eyes for a moment. Of course, she thought, it was always going to end like this. The official raised his voice again for the crucial part. "In the presence of these witnesses," he said, "we declare the intent of this house to bind itself to the house of the Archduchess in honorable betrothal." The hall grew quieter. Hannah could almost feel the held breaths. "Your Highness," the official continued, turning toward where Leonhardt must be standing, "do you accept this union and pledge your word to honor this alliance?" Silence poured into the pause after the question. Hannah held her breath without meaning to, her hand pressed against the stone arch. In the great hall, the official stood waiting. The gathered nobles leaned forward. "Your Highness?" he prompted. Leonhardt's answer, when it came, was clear and calm. "No," he said. The word fell like a stone into still water. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the hall erupted in a low roar of shocked whispers. Hannah's eyes flew open. She wondered if she had misheard, if her tired mind had twisted the sound. But voices confirmed it at once. "He said no. Did he refuse? Is he mad?" The official stammered. Your Highness, perhaps you did not—" "I heard the question," Leonhardt said, "and I answer it sincerely. I cannot pledge myself to this union as it stands." Hannah gripped her crutch so tightly her fingers hurt. The dowager's voice cut through the noise, sharp as glass. "Leonhardt," she hissed, not loudly, but enough for those near her to hear. "What are you doing?" He turned to her, his tone steady. "What I should have done long ago," he said. "I am speaking honestly." A rustle moved through the hall. Nobles shifted, exchanging looks. Some stared openly, others tried to look bored and failed. At the far end of the dais, Archduchess Amalia stood with her uncle. She was slender, dressed in silver and white, her face pale but composed. Her eyes, dark and intelligent, watched Leonhardt with intense focus. The official cleared his throat, sweating. "Perhaps we should adjourn briefly," he suggested. "No," Amalia said suddenly. Her uncle turned to her, startled. "Niece!" She stepped forward, her chin lifted. "Let the prince speak," she said. "If I am to hear a refusal, I would rather hear it plainly than have it wrapped in silk." Her voice carried, surprisingly firm for someone who had been silent until now. Leonhardt bowed his head slightly toward her. "Your Imperial Highness," he said, "I meant no disrespect to you." "Then show none," she replied. "Explain yourself." He drew a breath. "Very well," he said. "Before all present, I acknowledge your virtues. I know of your education, your sense of duty, your care for your younger siblings. You would be an honorable wife to any man and a fine partner in any alliance." A few murmurs of approval rose. "However," he continued, "I have come to believe that marriage entered for reasons of state alone, without the consent of the heart, is a false foundation. I do not wish to begin such a union with a lie." His words rippled outward. Some faces hardened, others grew thoughtful. The dowager's hand tightened on her fan. "You speak of lies?" she said. "You disgrace your house in front of half the empire." "I am trying to spare it a greater disgrace later," he answered quietly. Amalia watched him with an unreadable expression. "You do not know me," she said, "yet you refuse me." "I do not know you enough," he corrected, "and you do not know me. You deserve a husband who looks at you without wondering whom he has betrayed to stand at your side." Hannah felt as if he had reached into the archway and tugged her heart into the hall. Someone in the crowd muttered, "He thinks he is a poet." Another answered, "He thinks he is free." Amalia's uncle stepped in, voice tight. "Your Highness," he said, "these matters are not personal. They are questions of stability. Your house and ours are not at war," Leonhardt said, "nor at risk of it. You seek assurance, I understand. But ask yourself whether binding your niece to a man whose heart is elsewhere gives you true assurance." His words hung in the air. The uncle bristled. "And where, pray, is your heart, if not with your duty?" Leonhard hesitated. Hannah pressed harder against the stone, willing herself invisible. "My heart," he said slowly, "has been awakened to the idea that duty and truth must walk together. If I pledge what I do not feel, I will become a husband who resents his chains and a ruler who hides behind ceremony. That will help neither my house nor yours." The hall fell quieter. It was not the wild declaration of a reckless boy. It was something else, something harder to dismiss. Amalia studied him. After a moment, she gave a small, tired smile. "I find," she said, "that I am more relieved than offended." Gasps. Her uncle turned to her in shock. "Amalia!" She did not look at him. "I too have a heart, uncle," she said. "No one asked it what it wanted. They only told it where to stand." She faced Leonhard fully. "I do not love you," she said plainly. "We have met twice. You looked at my shoes more than my face." A few uncomfortable chuckles broke out. "Perhaps I was admiring the polish," he said, a faint smile touching his mouth. "Perhaps," she agreed. "In any case, you are right. I would rather not be bound to a man who sees marriage as a well-placed stone in a wall." "I want a little more than that," her uncle sputtered. "You embarrass us." "We are already embarrassed," she said. "Better to be embarrassed for honesty than for deception." She inclined her head toward Leonhard. "I accept your refusal," she said, "on the condition that you are as honest in future choices as you are now." He bowed. "You have my word." The official looked as if he might faint with relief and distress combined. "So," he stammered, "it is the mutual decision of both houses to reconsider the terms of this alliance?" Amalia's uncle opened his mouth to shout no. The dowager cut in first. "Yes," she said. The word surprised even those closest to her. She stared straight ahead, her jaw tight. "The terms will be re-examined," she said. "There will be no formal betrothal today." A hum of shock rolled through the hall. Some faces showed disapproval. Others masked their expressions quickly. Very few looked almost impressed. "That is all," the dowager concluded. "The guests may enjoy the refreshments." It was as close to an orderly dismissal as anyone could manage in that moment. The crowd shifted, conversations bursting forth, restrained and excited all at once. Hannah stepped back from the arch, her heart pounding. He had done it, she thought. He said no. She felt dizzy, as if the palace had tilted. A servant hurried toward her. "Fräulein," he whispered, "you should not be lurking here. If they find you—" "I am leaving," she said quickly. She slipped out through the lesser door and into the cold air, gulping it like water. The sound of the hall followed her faintly. Voices, footsteps, the clink of glasses. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. For the next few days, the palace buzzed like a disturbed hive. Reports flew in all directions. Some said the Archduchess had wept. Others insisted she had laughed. Some said the imperial family was outraged. Others said they secretly admired Leonhardt's spine. No one knew the full truth, and everyone claimed to. Servants carried versions of the story down to the kitchens. From the kitchens, it went to the streets. From the streets to printing presses that would, in time, smooth the edges and turn it into a neat column of gossip. Hannah tried to keep her head down. Her work in the archives continued, though there was a new tension in the air. The official handed her a fresh stack of pages. "You heard?" he asked. "I was near a door," she said. He snorted. "Half the palace was near a door. Well, whatever else we say, the prince has courage." "Or foolishness," another clerk muttered. "Sometimes they are the same," the official replied. He glanced at Hannah. "You may find your services less in demand soon," he said. "There will be fewer concerts, more private councils, but I will not throw you out in this weather. We will taper slowly." She nodded. "Thank you." At home, her father listened as she recounted what she could bear to share. "He refused," he said, eyes wide, "in front of everyone." "Yes," she said. "And they did not drag him away in chains?" he asked weakly. "No," she said. "They poured wine instead." He rubbed his forehead. "Perhaps the world is stranger than I thought." "Perhaps," she said quietly. In the days that followed, she did not see Leonhardt. She imagined him sealed in some high room, surrounded by angry relatives and advisers. In truth, the confrontation was less dramatic than she feared, and more exhausting. One evening, he sat alone with his mother in a smaller salon. The dowager held a cup of chocolate in her hands untouched. "You could have ruined us," she said softly. "I did not," he replied. "Not this time," she said. Silence settled between them. He watched her fingers around the cup. "I will understand if you cannot forgive me," he said. She let out a low breath. "Forgive you," she repeated. "Leonhard, I am too old to waste energy on not forgiving my own son." She set the cup down. "When I was your age," she said, "my parents arranged my marriage. I did not know your father. I had seen him twice, once on horseback and once at a ball. He was handsome. I told myself that was enough." "Did you love him?" Leonhard asked quietly. "I could have," she said, "under different circumstances, but we were not allowed to learn each other slowly. We were thrown together like two pieces of furniture in a room. We did our duty. We produced heirs. We smiled at tables. We spoke about the weather." Her gaze drifted to the window. "When he fell ill," she went on, "I realized I had spent 20 years sleeping beside a stranger. I mourned him, but I also mourned the woman I might have been if someone had asked me what I wanted." Leonhardt's chest tightened. "You never told me this." "Would it have changed the fact of your birth?" she asked. "No, it would only have made you restless sooner." She met his eyes. "I do not approve of the way you did this," she said. "You embarrassed powerful people. You made enemies you did not need to make, but I am not entirely sure you were wrong." It was as much as she could bring herself to concede. He blinked. "That is generous." "Do not misunderstand me," she said sharply. "I am still angry. The Archduchess's uncle will sulk for a year. We will have to mend fences, and I will be the one doing most of the mending. But I would rather mend fences than see you rot behind them." A faint smile touched his mouth. "Mother." "Do not be sentimental," she warned. "I cannot bear it." He chuckled softly. She studied him again, more closely this time. "This girl," she said. "Fräulein Weiss, how much of this chaos belongs to her?" He looked down at his hands. "Meeting her," he said slowly, "forced me to look at the world differently. But she did not ask me to refuse the betrothal. She never asked me for anything." "Except a chair," the dowager murmured. He smiled despite himself. "Yes, except that. Do you love her?" the dowager asked. He did not answer at once. "I do not know if I understand that word fully," he said. "I know I think of her when I face a choice. I know her courage makes mine feel less like a costume. I know I cannot imagine standing beside someone else at an altar and pretending she never existed." The dowager looked away. "You pick a difficult path," she said. "She will not be welcomed easily." "I know," he said. "She will be watched," she continued, "judged, measured against standards no one could meet." "I know," he repeated. "And yet you would pull her into this?" she demanded. "I will not pull her anywhere," he said. "If she does not wish it, I will leave her in peace. But if she is willing to walk beside me, I will not hide her." He raised his eyes to hers. "I ask only that you do not turn her life into a battlefield," he added quietly. "If she ever crosses this threshold as more than a copyist, I would like her to find something that feels a little like a home." The dowager's mouth pressed into a thin line. "You ask much," she said. "I am your son," he replied. "That is the trouble," she muttered. She rose, smoothing her skirts. "Very well," she said. "I will not promise enthusiasm, but I will promise an attempt at restraint." For her it was almost an embrace. "Thank you," he said. "Do not thank me yet," she warned. "I have agreed to nothing. I only admit that perhaps, just perhaps, obedience is not the only virtue." Her gaze softened for a heartbeat. "Your father would be furious," she added. "He believed in alliances like other men believe in saints." "Would he have denied me entirely?" Leonhard asked. "He would have lectured," she said. "Then he would have gone to his study, closed the door and stared at the wall for an hour. After that, he would have told you to choose quickly and bear what came of it." She paused. "Choose quickly," she echoed. "Life does not wait for princes or copyists." She left the room. Leonhardt stood alone, feeling as if the air around him had shifted by a degree. In the weeks that followed, the storm began to calm. The imperial house, perhaps relieved not to force an unwilling prince on their niece, allowed whispers of mutual reconsideration to spread. Amalia was seen riding with a young officer not long after. People pointed and muttered about new prospects. Her uncle sulked, then turned his attention to other projects. Some nobles distanced themselves from the Hollenbergs for a time, cancelling dinners or delaying agreements. Others, sensing that the house had not in fact crumbled, returned cautiously. Within the palace, life resumed something like its old rhythm, though with a slightly different tempo. Leonhardt took advantage of the space he had carved. He pushed for improvements in the city, better lighting in certain streets, modest funds for schools, grain set aside against future shortages. When a hospital requested money for a new wing, he attached a condition. It must be built with ramps as well as stairs, he said in council, corridors wide enough for crutches, doors that do not require a soldier's shoulder to open. An old baron snorted. For what? The lame make a very small part of the city. And a very large part of our conscience, Leonhardt replied. The baron grumbled, but the motion passed. News of these small changes trickled back to the streets. Hannah heard of them indirectly, in remarks at the market, in fragments of conversation at the shop. Did you hear? The new hospital plans show a slope instead of steps. For the carts, they say. For the bodies, more like. Or for those who cannot climb. She listened and said nothing, but a quiet warmth spread in her chest. Her own time at the palace came, as the archive official had predicted, to a gentle end. One grey afternoon, he handed her the last stack of payments. We have fewer scores now, he said, and more idle violinists. I cannot justify the expense. I understand, she said. You have been generous already. He sniffed. If we need someone with legible handwriting again, we will call you. Do not let your skills rust. I will sharpen them on waltzes, she said. He actually smiled a little. When she left the palace that day, it felt less like a dismissal and more like stepping out of a chapter. She walked slowly down the steps, her arms strong from months of climbing, her balance steadier than it had been. The sky was low and pale. At home, her father listened, nodded, and patted the seat beside him. We survived before the palace, he said. We will survive after it. Yes, she said. We will. She took on more small copying jobs from local musicians and printers. Her reputation had grown. People knew she was fast and precise. When a young violinist confessed he could not afford published parts, she offered to copy them at half price and let him pay in installments. You are too soft, her father grumbled. I am practical, she replied. If he becomes famous, he will use my services forever. She also began teaching 2 neighborhood girls to copy. One had quick eyes and slower hands. The other had clumsy pen strokes, but endless patience. Letters are like people, Hannah told them. They must stand straight or they fall on each other. Like you, one girl said innocently. You stand straight even with only one leg. Hannah smiled. I have 2 legs, she said. One is just made of wood. She slept more soundly than she once had. The heaviness in her chest softened into something else. She thought of Leonhardt often, but less like a wound and more like a bright, difficult memory. She did not expect to see him again. Princes did not walk down her street without reason, and yet sometimes at dusk she found herself looking toward the end of the lane, as if expecting a well-cut coat to appear out of the shadows. At the palace, the dowager watched her son with wary acceptance. They spoke more now, not always about politics or duty. One evening she found him at a window overlooking the city. You spend a great deal of time staring at rooftops, she said. They keep me humble, he replied. Each one covers a life I know nothing about. She joined him. You intend to seek her out, she said. It was not a question. Yes, he said. And what will you offer, she asked. A handful of pretty words? A tour of the throne room? A life, he said. Not an easy one, but one where she is not hidden. And if she refuses, the dowager asked, then I will wish her peace, he said, and try to live in such a way that I do not dishonor what she taught me. The dowager studied his profile. You have grown, she said reluctantly. I am not sure I like it. Growth is rarely flattering, he said. She sighed. Go then, she said. Find her, But do not drag a crowd behind you. If this is to be done, begin it as you began with her, as a man, not a parade." He turned, surprised. "Thank you," he said. "Do not thank me," she said. "Thank the fact that I am bored with talking about curtains." He laughed. She touched his arm once, a brief, almost awkward gesture. "And Leonhardt," she added. "If she comes here, she will be uncomfortable. Remember that. She will need more than fine rooms. She will need allies." He nodded. "Will you be one?" She did not answer directly. "I will try not to be her enemy," she said. "The rest will depend on whether she can tolerate my company." It was not a promise, but it was a path. That night, as the city settled under a thin mist, two people lay awake in different parts of Vienna. In the palace, Leonhardt stared at the ceiling and rehearsed words that sounded foolish when spoken aloud. In the Freihausviertel, Hannah listened to her father's gentle snore and traced in her mind the pattern of a question she had once asked in a crowded cafe. Both of them, in their own way, were gathering courage for a morning neither yet knew had already chosen them. The bell above the cafe door jingled again on another cold morning. Hannah sat at a small table near the window. Her crutches leaned neatly against the wall. A thin notebook lay open in front of her, covered in tight lines of musical notation. Her fingers were ink-stained as always. She had come to meet a young composer who wanted his songs copied cheaply. He was late. She did not mind. The coffee was warm, the air smelled of bread, and for once no one seemed interested in her at all. People came and went. Voices rose and fell. It could have been any winter day. It did not feel like one. She lifted her eyes to the window. Snow clung to the corners of the glass. Outside, carriage wheels traced dark arcs in the slush. Life went on, stubborn and ordinary. She had almost convinced herself that what had happened months before, the cafe, the carriage, the palace, the betrothal that vanished in mid-air, belonged to another lifetime. A strange dream, folded and tucked away. The door opened. The bell rang. The draft reached her first. She did not look up immediately. The young composer, she thought, late but not lost. Footsteps crossed the floor. A chair scraped somewhere. A waiter greeted someone with unusual politeness. Hannah bent over her notebook. "Is this seat taken?" a familiar voice asked. Her heart jumped. She looked up. Leonhardt stood beside her table, tall, wrapped in a dark, simple coat that did nothing to hide who he was. His hair was dusted with snow. His eyes were brighter than she remembered, as if some weight had shifted inside him. He smiled a little uncertainly. "May I sit next to you?" he asked. For a second, she could not breathe. Those were her words. The cafe around them buzzed faintly, sensing something but not yet focused. A woman at the next table glanced over, then did a double take when she recognized him. Hannah's throat tightened. "Your Highness," she managed at last. Here." He tilted his head slightly. "You have not yet answered my question, Fräulein Weiss." She swallowed. "Yes," she said. "You may sit." He sat. For a heartbeat, they simply looked at each other. Up close, she saw small lines near his eyes that had not been there before. Not age, exactly. Experience. "You look well," he said. "I look the same," she replied. "You look different. Is that good?" he asked. "It is something," she said. He laughed softly. A waiter appeared, hovering. "Your Highness, we are honored," he said quickly. Shall I find a quieter table at the back?" "No," Leonhardt said. "This one is perfect." The waiter nodded so hard his hair almost fell over his forehead. "Of course, Your Highness. Coffee, chocolate, a full breakfast?" "2 coffees," Leonhardt said, "and whatever pastry you recommend, for both of us." "There is no need," Hannah began. "We can argue about it after we have eaten," he said. "My courage is stronger with sugar." The waiter fled, eager to please. Hannah set her pen down, flexing her fingers. "How did you find me?" she asked quietly. "I have an excellent memory for the places where my life changes," he said, "and for certain seat by certain windows." "You looked for me before?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "I was advised to wait, to get my own house in order first." She understood at once. "Your mother," she said, "and my counsel and my own hesitation," he admitted. "I did not wish to appear at your door with nothing but pretty speeches. They grow cheap in my world." "And now?" she asked. Now, he said, I come with fewer speeches and more intention. She tried to smile, but her hand still trembled slightly. I heard about the betrothal, she said, the refusal. Everyone heard, he said dryly. You did not do that because of me, she said. I did it partly because of you, he answered, and partly because of myself. I could not ask anyone to share a life I despised. The coffees arrived. The pastry followed, flanked by the anxious waiter, who almost knocked over the sugar bowl in his eagerness. Thank you, Leonhard said, rescuing it. The waiter retreated, but not far. Several other patrons were watching too. Some tried to be discreet, others were openly curious. Hannah wrapped her hands around the warm cup. People are looking, she murmured. Leonhard glanced around. They have practice, he said. They will not injure themselves. I do not wish to be the cause of another scene, she said. Neither do I, he replied. Let us see if quiet words can be more powerful than loud ones. She blew gently on her coffee. Why did you come? She asked. He met her gaze fully. To ask you a question, he said. This time with my name and rank on the table, so you know what you are agreeing to refuse. Her heart beat faster. I have questions too, she said. Ask, he replied. Your family, she said. They must be furious still. They were, he said. Now they are tired. There is a difference. That does not sound like full approval, she said. My mother has promised not to sharpen her tongue on you, he said. It is the most valuable treaty I have signed this year. She tried not to smile and failed. The Archduchess, she asked. Send word that she will not weep for a stranger, he said. She prefers honesty. She has her eye on a captain with good shoulders. And the alliances, she pressed. Being recalculated, he said. No one enjoys it, but no one has starved because of my decision. The world, it seems, continues to turn. She looked down at her cup. And your position? She asked. You are still expected to marry, to produce heirs, to stand in rooms and be seen. Yes, he said. That will not change. And you believe, she said slowly, that they will accept someone like me beside you. There it was, stark and bare between them. He did not flinch. Some will not, he said. They will whisper. They will raise eyebrows so high they will strain their foreheads. They will say I have lost my mind, my judgment, my sense of proportion. And you? She asked. I will say I have found my spine, he replied. She shook her head. You make it sound simple, she said. It is not simple, he said. It will be difficult, for you more than for me. I will have a title to hide behind when I am weary. You will have only yourself. That is not a comforting argument, she said. I am not trying to comfort you, he said. I am trying to respect you enough to be honest. She drew in a careful breath. And what, she asked, does your honesty wish to say? He leaned forward a little, his hands around his cup as if anchoring himself. Hannah Weiss, he said, I have tried to imagine my life without you in it. I have imagined a marriage of convenience, polite and empty. I have imagined filling my days with counsels and my nights with mechanical conversation. Every time I find myself thinking of a morning in a crowded cafe when a young woman with crutches asked me for a chair as if she had a right to rest. I remember your laughter, your sharp tongue, your refusal to accept pity. I remember that with you for the first time I felt like more than a statue in a uniform. She swallowed. I also remember, he went on quietly, that you have never asked me for anything but truth. So here is mine. I love you. I love the way you walk into rooms full of stairs and pretend they are your own hallway. I love the way your hand does not tremble when your leg does. I love that you have changed the way I think about my duty, my city, and myself. I do not know if my love is worthy of you, but it is yours if you want it. The world seemed to narrow to the space between them. People around them had fallen quieter, sensing the weight of his words without hearing every syllable. Hannah's eyes stung. You do not even know me, she whispered. I know enough to want to learn the rest beside you day by day, he said, unless you choose to shut the door. She looked at her hands. I am not, she struggled for words. I am not the woman they picture beside you. I cannot glide through ballrooms. I cannot ride beside you at parades. I will need more rest than your guests. I will slow you. You will change my pace, he said. There is a difference. And the looks, she said, her voice low. You think I do not know how they stare already. They will stare more. They will mock more quietly but sharper. I cannot promise to silence every tongue, he said. I can promise that none of that mockery will find shelter in my house. I can promise that when they stare they will see a woman who is not ashamed of herself, and a man who is not ashamed to stand beside her. She lifted her gaze slowly. You speak as if courage is easy, she said. It is not, he replied. I am frightened now. My heart is beating like a bad drummer at a wedding, but I would rather fear the future with you than live safely without you. She almost laughed through the wetness in her eyes. You are terrible with metaphors, she said. I am a prince, not a poet, he answered. I work with what I have. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small box, plain wood, unadorned by jewels. I could have brought something grand, he said. Gold, gems. My mother offered 3 different ring chests. I told her no. He opened the box. Inside lay a simple band of warm metal, set with a small, clear stone that caught the light without shouting for attention. It is not the most expensive we own, he said. It is the one that reminded me of you. Steady, not fragile. Bright when the light touches it. She stared at it. Leonhardt, she murmured. He took a breath. Hannah, he said, and his voice dropped so only she could hear, though the room leaned in. Will you marry me? Not as a secret, not as a distraction, as my wife, as the woman who will sit beside me when the world stares and when it sleeps. She felt as if the floor had turned to water, and she was somehow still standing. Her first instinct rose fast. Say no, to protect him, to protect her father, to protect the small, hard-won life she knew. The second instinct was quieter, deeper. Say yes, and trust the courage that had brought her this far. You do not know what you ask, she whispered. I know exactly what I ask, he said. I ask you to enter a house that will not be ready for you. I ask you to bear looks that will feel like blows. I ask you to trust that my hand will not leave yours when it becomes difficult. I ask you to share days that will be long and decisions that will be heavy. I ask you to help me become a better man than I am now. She blinked, tears gathering. And what do I receive? She asked, her voice rough. You receive a stubborn husband, he said, who will wake up every day and choose you again. You receive rooms where your crutches will be heard but never mocked. You receive a seat at tables where you were once expected to carry trays. You receive the chance to change the way this city sees bodies and worth. And you receive my heart, foolish and flawed as it is. Her chest tightened painfully. Say it, he murmured. Whatever it is. She drew in a long, shaky breath. If I say yes, she said slowly, I do it on one condition. He nodded. Name it. That you ask me not only as a prince, she said, but as a man. If you ask as a prince, I will always wonder if you chose me to prove a point. If you ask as a man, I can trust it. His eyes softened. Then I ask you as both, he said, because I cannot tear myself in half. As a man, I love you. As a prince, I choose you. As both, I ask. Will you be my wife? The room held its breath. Hannah wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, laughing once at her own clumsiness. You make it very difficult to say no, she said. That is the intention, he replied. She let her gaze travel from his face to the ring, then back again. She saw again the boyish laughter over soup, the angry defense in the drawing room, the calm refusal in the great hall. She saw the hospital ramps, the changed plans, the softened eyes of a once terrifying dowager. She saw her father's tired hands, his hope that she would make the world suffer her honesty. Fear whispered loudly. Courage this time spoke louder. Yes, she said. The word came out small, the effect was enormous. Yes, he repeated as if he needed to hear it twice. Yes, she said again, clearer. I will marry you, Leonhardt, as a man, as a prince, as the owner of very impractical gloves. He laughed, the sound breaking like sunlight. The cafe burst into murmurs. A few people clapped without quite knowing whether it was permitted. Leonhardt stood, went around the small table, and knelt carefully on the worn floor at her side. Gasps. A prince on his knee beside a lame girl. He slid the ring gently onto her finger. It fit. He did not kiss her hand. He held it, both of his closing around hers, firm and warm. Then the world may do as it pleases, he said softly. We have chosen. Hannah felt the eyes again, hundreds of them, heavier than ever. For the first time they did not weigh her down. She squeezed his hand in return. Very well, she said. Let us see if your palace floors are as brave as your words. Her father did nearly fall off his chair. Leonhardt insisted on going to the shop that very afternoon, without full escort, with only one discreet guard waiting outside. The shop bell rang as they entered. Jakob Weiss looked up from a pile of scores, squinting. Hannah, you are back early, he began, then saw the man behind her. His hand went to his chest. You, he said faintly, you are the one from the carriage. Among other things, Leonhardt said gently. Master Weiss, may I sit? Jakob blinked. I suppose it would be a bad start if I refused a prince a chair. It would be an excellent start, Leonhardt said. It would mean you are not too impressed to keep your judgment. Hannah shot him a warning look. Papa, she said, moving to him, touching his arm. Please sit. I have something to tell you. He lowered himself onto the nearest stool, never taking his eyes off Leonhardt. Hannah, he asked. She sat beside him. Her crutches leaned against the counter. Do you remember, she said carefully, when you told me that if the palace wanted to pay me for doing what I already did well, I should let them suffer my honesty? He snorted, despite his shock. I remember. It seems, she went on, that their suffering is not yet complete. Leonhardt almost choked on a laugh. Master Weiss, he said, sobering, I have come to ask for your daughter's hand, with her consent already obtained. She said yes in public. I'm here to make sure she has your blessing in private. Jakob stared from one to the other. Hannah, he said again. She lifted her left hand, showing him the ring. His eyes filled at once. You are certain, he whispered. This is not a jest, not a pity. No, she said firmly. It is not pity. It is madness, perhaps. But it is ours. Leonhardt leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I cannot pretend, he said, that this will be an easy road. Your daughter will face unkindness. So will you. People will speak of her as if she cannot hear. They will question my judgment. They will question her worth. I will not insult you by promising otherwise. Jakob's jaw clenched. I have lived in this city long enough, he said. I know how people talk. I can only promise, Leonhardt went on, that in my house her value will never be polluted by such talk. That I will stand beside her when others wish to push her into corners. That I will provide for her, and for you if you will allow it. That I will listen when she tells me I am being an idiot, which she will do often, and that I will love her as best I can, every day. Jakob looked at his daughter. Hannah, he said softly, is this what you want? She took his rough hand in both of hers. Yes, Papa, she said. I am afraid, but I want it anyway. He blinked hard, then nodded. Then I would be a poor father to deny you courage because of my fear, he said. Your mother would scold me from heaven. He turned to Leonhardt. You hurt her, he said quietly, and I will. I will. He threw his hands up. I will not be able to do anything because you are a prince, but I will curse you with every breath until I die. Leonhardt smiled, eyes bright. That seems fair, he said. I accept your terms. Jakob huffed out a watery laugh. Very well, he said. Take her then, but do not forget where she learned to stand straight. How could I? Leonhardt said. I will see it every time I come to this street. Arrangements began. The palace trembled a little but did not fall. The dowager insisted on certain forms, proper announcements, invitations, a ceremony in the chapel attached to their house. She also, to many people's surprise, called the chief steward and said, See that the path to the chapel door is smooth. No loose stones, no steep steps. The bride will not be carried like cargo. Of course, Your Highness, the steward replied, hiding his astonishment. Servants buzzed. Have you heard? The prince is marrying the copyist. The lame one? Yes. It is not possible. It is happening. Maybe love is a disease. If so, it is catching. Hannah was measured for a gown. The seamstress, a practical woman with pins in her mouth, asked sensible questions. You will want the hem a little shorter on the wooden leg, she said, so it does not catch, and sleeves you can move in. Princesses are often sewn into cages. We will not do that to you. Hannah smiled. Thank you. "You will remember me when you are a princess?" the seamstress asked, half teasing. "I will remember everyone who did not make my life harder," Hannah replied. "You will be a very busy princess," the seamstress said. The day of the wedding dawned cool and bright. Hannah dressed in a quiet room, her father beside her, his hands shaking as he buttoned the back of her gown. It was simple, in cream and soft grey, with a small veil that did not hide her face. "You look like someone I do not know," he said, his voice thick. "I am still me," she said. "Under all this starch," he kissed her forehead. Outside, people were already gathering near the chapel. Some had invitations, some had curiosity. News had spread beyond court circles. A few faces from the Freihausviertel peered among grand hats and coats, eager to see if the stories were true. Inside the chapel, the floor had indeed been altered, the front steps replaced with a gentle slope, the carpet laid flat and tight, no wrinkles to trip a crutch. Leonhard waited at the front, hands steady, heart not. He wore formal attire, but no excessive ornament. He had insisted on that. "I want to recognize myself when I say my vows," he had told the tailor. Guests filled the pews. Count Riedel stood near the front, his expression resigned but not unkind. Countess von Lillian sat farther back, lips pressed tight, curiosity warring with pride. Archduchess Amalia had sent polite regrets and a bouquet of winter flowers. The flowers lay near the altar. The music began, soft strings echoing off stone. Hannah appeared at the entrance, her veil lowered, her crutches polished, her father on her arm. A ripple went through the room. Some eyes widened, some softened, a few narrowed. People were people. Leonhard saw only her. She moved down the aisle slowly, each step measured, every bit of her effort visible. She did not pretend to glide. She walked as she always had, with determination, with balance, with occasional small stumbles and swift recoveries. Her father's hand trembled on her arm. When they reached the front, he placed her hand in Leonhardt's and swallowed hard. "Do not forget where she comes from," he whispered. "Never," Leonhardt said. Jakob stepped aside. The priest spoke words about unions, about vows, about the mysteries of two lives becoming one. For once, the speeches did not feel like empty ceremony. Hannah and Leonhardt faced each other. "Repeat after me," the priest said. Leonhardt did, voice steady. "I, Leonhardt, take you, Hannah, as my wife." Then Hannah's turn. Her voice shook on the first word. "I, Hannah," she said, then paused. Leonhardt squeezed her hands lightly. She smiled a little through the tears. "I, Hannah," she continued stronger, "take you, Leonhardt, as my husband." She promised to stay, to walk beside him, to speak the truth even when it burned. He promised to listen, to honor her, to protect her dignity as fiercely as he protected his borders. When the priest asked if anyone objected, no one spoke. Perhaps because no one dared. Perhaps because for that brief moment they understood they were seeing something rare. "You may seal your vows," the priest said. Leonhardt lifted her veil. For a heartbeat they simply looked at each other. The boy from the cafe, the girl with the crutches, two people who had walked a long road to stand still together. Then he bent and kissed her gently, with reverence and joy. The chapel could not help itself. Applause burst out. Some clapped shyly, some loudly. Jacob wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The dowager dabbed at hers far more discreetly. Afterward, in the reception hall, people spoke to them. Some offered sincere congratulations. Some offered carefully polite words that hid their confusion. Hannah answered each in turn, her back straight, her hand in Leonhardt's. At one point, the dowager approached. Hannah tensed, then reminded herself. This woman had moved mountains out of her way, even if she had grumbled while doing it. "Your Highness," Hannah said, bowing slightly. "Now that title may apply to you," the dowager replied. "But I suppose Mother will do in private, eventually." Hannah almost choked. "That seems very soon," she managed. The dowager's eyes softened. "You walked well," she said quietly. "Not because you did not stumble, but because you did not pretend not to. That will serve you." "Thank you," Hannah said. "And if any of these people make your life miserable," the dowager added under her breath, "you will tell me." My tongue has not lost all its sharpness." Hannah smiled genuinely. "I will remember that," she said. Years passed. They did not turn into fairy tales. They turned into days, one after another, which is harder and more beautiful. Hannah and Leonhardt lived with arguments about curtains and clinics, debates about taxes and tea, shared jokes about ministers who talked too long, quiet moments in private when the weight of the world made their shoulders touch more closely. They opened parts of the palace to musicians who could not afford grand halls. Hannah sat with them, her crutches propped beside her, copying and listening, recognizing the shy spark in their eyes. They visited the new hospital wing together. Hannah tested the ramps with her own weight, nodding approvingly when they did not tilt. "Better," she told the architect, "but make the railing smoother. Hands like mine will use it often." "Yes, Your Highness," he said, slightly out of breath from trying to keep up with her. Children in the city grew up seeing a prince and a one-legged princess riding in carriages, walking slowly down market streets, sitting together at small tables during public visits. Some whispered, some pointed. Many simply accepted it as fact. Sometimes people have one leg. Sometimes princes marry copyists. Sometimes doors are built wider because someone insisted. In the evenings, when the palace was quieter, Hannah and Leonhardt often returned in memory to that first cafe. "Do you remember," he would say, "how you nearly refused my offer of broth?" "And do you remember," she would answer, "how you nearly let your guards drag you out like a sack of flour?" They laughed, knowing how small and how enormous those moments had been. Once, years later, they visited the cafe itself. It had changed a little. New tables, a few new smudges on the walls. They sat by the window. The owner, older now, hurried over, bowing so low his nose nearly brushed the floor. "Your Highnesses," he stammered, "it is an honor I do not deserve." "On the contrary," Leonhardt said, "your chairs have played a dangerous role in history." The man laughed nervously, not quite understanding. Hannah looked around. At another table, a young girl with a limp stood uncertainly, holding a cup, looking for a place to sit. Hannah lifted her hand. "There is a seat here," she called, "if you do not mind princes who talk too much." The girl's eyes widened. She shuffled over, shy. "May I sit next to you?" she asked. "Yes," Hannah said warmly. "Always." And somewhere beyond the cafe walls, beyond the palace, beyond the snow and the roofs and the marches and the waltzes, a simple truth settled quietly into the city. The measure of a life is not how straight one walks nor how high one stands, but whom one dares to sit beside, and who dares to sit beside us when the whole world is watching. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.